Hello, Luke here with catsandcarp.com, and I'm going to show you a great trip I had drifting for catfish and catching a load of hickory shad on a rod and reel. Just absolute great time. Now, you notice that I'm using a kayak and not my normal boat. There's some really good reasons for this. I love my boat, but launching it can be a pain, and in a lot of areas you have to pay a fee to launch your boat, and the boat launch closes at night and has certain hours. This, I just pull up to the river, chuck it in, and I pull it out anytime I want. It gives you such great freedom. And on this trip, I'm fishing after work. I just want to nip down really quick. I don't want to pay 10 bucks to launch my boat. And if I want to stay out past night, then I can. I don't have to worry about it. It's also a really stealthy, precise way to approach the fish. So I pull up to a little spot here. Instead of anchoring, I just keep close to this rail. I'm only using one rod. I've got half a gizzard shad on the end of a 10-aught hook. I'm just casting it out there. But my rule of thumb is never wait more than 15 minutes for a bite. So I set my iPhone to a 15-minute timer, stick it in my pocket. If that alarm goes off and I haven't gotten a bite, I'm out of there. So I spent 15 minutes in the rain soaking some bait and didn't get a hit, so I decided to get out of there. I got looking around and seeing a lot of hickory shad jumping around, so I decided to switch gears, and I put on two chartreuse curly-tailed grubs, 2 inchers with 1/16-ounce jig heads, and doubled them up and threw it out there and just started catching a load of these bad boys.
I had a double there. The other one busted me off. The two going in the opposite direction.
I started off using 2 curly-tailed grubs on my line. I had one on the end of my line and another one about 2 feet up on a dropper loop. But I kept breaking off and losing lures because I'd get doubles and the fish would run off in opposite directions really hard and snap the lure. So that wasn't any good, so I just switched to a single. The other thing I figured out was that trolling for these shad was really effective. The school of shad would kind of move in and out, and you just paddle along and drag your lure right through a school of shad and just start hitting them. And that worked really well. And once you trolled your way through the school of shad, you could figure out where they're at. Then you could stop and cast to them until the school moved on, and then you could troll around some more, find them, and it was great. It was a great way to quickly locate shad, and I got lots of hookups trolling for shad.
What a pretty fish. Yeah, I tried to put it in my eye. Mean fish.
These shad here are different than the gizzard shad I catch for bait in my other videos. Gizzard shad stay in the rivers and lakes all year round. These hickory shad are actually related to the herring, and they come in from the ocean once a year in the springtime. And when they come in, the stripers come in and the blue catfish come in shallow, chasing and feeding on them. They're called a shad, but they're really a herring. And that's why they'll hit a lure, while a normal gizzard shad or threadfin shad will never take a lure, or only rarely take a lure.
Now look at that. Isn't that a beautiful fish? Now I'm throwing these back instead of using them for bait, because it's illegal to keep them. These populations were nearly decimated, and now they're coming back, and they're just a fabulous fish to fish for. But this is the secret formula to making 100-pound catfish. This is how you grow big catfish. Without these big shad, you don't have big catfish. So that's why we throw them back. We can keep those populations getting bigger and bigger. Our catfish are going to get bigger and bigger. Whoa.
The rod I'm using is the Shakespeare Ugly Sticks GX2 ultralight rod. It's about $39 for the rod and reel combo. I've got it spooled up with 4-pound mono, but I really should have had 6-pound. I broke off a couple times, especially when I was first starting off. It was a perfect little rod for this sort of thing. Just puts a huge bend in the rod. The fish are just super fun to catch on this. hickory shad have kind of a bony mouth. And so you really got to set the hook pretty good. And that's one of the reasons why I like trolling for them. Just by the nature of trolling for them, you end up setting the hook more because that fish grabs the lure and runs away, and you have the force of the boat moving forward combined with the resistance from the rod and everything, and it just gets you a little bit better hook set. But it's a nice sharp hook really goes a long way with these suckers because they you can lose a lot of them and get a lot of spit hooks because of that bony mouth.
Oh yeah! Ooh, that's a feisty one. Ooh. Oh, they like the chartreuse.
The lure I'm using was a 2-inch chartreuse colored curly-tailed grub, and that chartreuse color was super important. If you didn't have chartreuse, you were out of luck. They didn't want any other color than that, and that's how these hickory shad tend to be. My experience has been they either want chartreuse or they want black, and if you don't have the one that they want at that time, your name is mud, and they just have no interest in you. And there was a lot of guys running around fishing for these suckers with different lures and shad darts, and I was not the only one on the river. But they wanted chartreuse curly-tailed grubs, and that was all they were interested in. So you really got to get the lure dialed in, bring a variety of colors and different lures, and find out what they're into. And once you find it, that's all you use. This technique works really great for catching hickory shad, but it also works on American shad, on herring, skipjack. Any member of the herring family seems to like this sort of thing. So if you're in an area where you're fortunate enough to have a run of any of the herring species coming in from the ocean, you gotta get out and try this. It's just absolutely a kick in the pants. It's so much fun. Get out there. I think I caught 15 or 20 of these things in a couple hours. Just a great time. My biggest complaint about fishing from a kayak is that unless you have a really high quality kayak seat, it just hurts your back, especially if you've got back problems like I seem to have recently. So I go and kneel on top of the kayak, and it kind of gives me a little bit of a break.
Way to jump in the boat.
It's illegal to harvest herring or American shad or hickory shad in the Potomac River, but if you're in an area where it is legal to harvest these, they make absolutely fabulous catfish bait. One of my favorite baits ever. And this is a great way to catch a lot of bait very quickly. I was out here for hour and a half, 2 hours fishing for these hickory shad, and I caught 15 to 20 of these things. And they're pretty good size, so that's a lot of bait.
Woo-hoo-hoo. Perfect.
About the time I realized that I was glad the fish were spitting the hook, I thought to myself, it's time to go do some catfishing. So instead of sitting in one spot and soaking bait, I decided to go bumping for catfish. Just drifting along in the kayak and letting the lead bump along the bottom. Just keep it about 12, 18 inches off the bottom. Just let the current drift your bait right into the catfish's mouth.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh
The great thing about bumping for catfish is it also acts like your own poor man's fish finder or depth finder. As you're bumping and just constantly touching the bottom and bouncing the bottom, you notice the change in depths, and you notice and you can feel when you're bumping over structure. I like to use braided line for this reason. Really sensitive, good rod, and braided line lets you feel what you're dragging your bait over. And you can feel the change in depth, you can feel what's going on. This is great for letting you know what kind of areas to focus in. In this situation, I was hitting underwater ledges, the edges of an underwater canal that had been dredged out.
Hey, not too bad, not too bad. Let's go get some more. Oh yeah.
My favorite part about kayak fishing for blue catfish is feeling the hit. Those blue catfish just pound the bait. They just take off like a freight train, and it's the best part of the entire fight. And instead of having the rod in a rod holder, when that happens, it's in my hands, and it's just awesome every time. Nice light rod, big strong blue catfish, put a smile on your face every time.
Nice fish.
And that's when my GoPro ran out of memory. So you can't see the rest of the trip, but I had a great time. And if you like this video, check out some of our other great videos on the Cast and Carp YouTube channel, including creek fishing for bluegill and an instructional video about catching catfish. If you want to see new videos every week, don't forget to click subscribe. Thanks for watching.